fifth talk in our series. We're calling it the Theory Matters because this is where theory really matters for all of us. So today we have the privilege of having Abhishek Sinha. He's an assistant professor at the EE. He's going to talk to us about caching in networks without regret. I should clarify here, I'm Amit Alok, and I was the one who was responsible for the wrong email where I missed the word without and instead had the word with. So I sincerely express my regret for the error. So today Abhishek is here, and Abhishek, for some of us, we've kind of known him, and he did his undergraduate at Jadavpur, where he was awarded for his work there, and subsequently he did his masters at IISc and then his PhD at LITS while he was at MIT. Along the way, he's picked up quite a few awards. He's got an award for the Infocom paper, a Movihawk paper, and also had his academic achievements. Generally been interested in the recent past in networks, machine learning, of course, information theory, and applied probability. You'll see a lot of these aspects in the talk today. So without any further ado, let me give the stage to Abhishek. So Abhishek, it's all yours.
Thanks, Shashank and Amber for the invitation. It's echoing, I think. I don't know why. Okay, I think this is good right now.
Yeah, there's no echo.
I think it should be fine now.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So today I'll be talking about our latest work on caching in networks without regret. This is a joint work with my students, Devjit Padia at CMI, Chennai Mathematical Institute, and Krishna Kumar from IIT Madras. Preliminary version of this work appeared in this year in Sigmatrix 2020. However, in this talk, we will actually go far beyond that paper and cover more recent results. Okay. So I changed my slide. So Amitalo, can you please confirm whether the slide has changed? The next slide?
Yes, I can see slide.
Good. All right. So consider the standard network caching problem. Okay. So we have the users, caches, and routers, and these are represented by nodes in a graph, in a general graph. Time is slotted, and users request one file, at most one file per slot. A caching policy loads the limited capacity caches with some files, with the objective being that a requested file, which is only revealed in real time, can be retrieved from some nearby caches most of the time. So you want to get as many hits as you can. So the problem is how to design such an efficient network caching policy. Okay. So this is a very old problem, but there's a renewed interest on this problem. So I'm going to definitely, I'm not going to review all the works that has been done, but it is a kind of highlight. So this problem has been studied for more than 60 years, starting from the PDP-8 days. So popular single caching policy. So when you have a single cache instead of a network, it includes variants of, let's say, LRU, the least recently used, LFU, least frequently used, FIFO, and Marquardt, and I'm sure that all of you have heard of all these policies. So these are very simple policies, and these are the de facto, the standard caching policies. So in the literature for the analysis, we have got two modes of analysis depending on the assumptions that we are actually going to make. So for the case of adversarial request, so when we do not make any assumption on the file request pattern, the objective is to minimize the competitive ratio. Okay. On the other hand, when you have stochastic requests, when the file requests are modeled by some stochastic process, maybe IID, for example, let's say popularity coming from the Zipf's popularity distribution, which is a kind of popular assumption, the objective is to maximize the hit rate under all this stochastic assumption. So this is for the single cache. And for the caching network, due to the inherent complexity of this problem, almost all network caching problems, algorithms, they actually assume some form of stochasticity. So some form of stochastic assumptions on the file request pattern. Prominent recent work on this line, along this line, includes the work by femtocaching, the work on femtocaching by Shanmugam et al. In 2015, and also a couple of papers by Kaede as Nissen, and 2015-2016 respectively. The issue with that, with the stochasticity assumption, is that with fast changing popularity distributions, when the distribution, the file request distributions changes very fast, the stationarity assumption doesn't hold in practice. Okay, so we need a more robust caching policy for networks, and also another motivation for this work comes from the fact that there's almost no work from an online learning point of view. That is, instead of minimizing maximizing the competitive, minimizing the competitive ratio or maximizing the hit rate, we will be interested in minimizing the regret, the static regret from an online learning point of view. So our work will be more focused on this. Okay, so let's formalize this problem. So we can see that we can actually, although you are given a general network, this problem can be reduced under some certain assumption to a bipartite caching problem defined as follows. So consider a bipartite graph. Okay, the left hand side of the graph, the nodes on the graph, these are the users. Okay, and the right hand side represent the caches. And let's say the left hand side is denoted with the vertices on the left hand side is denoted by script of I, and the vertices on the caches, they are represented by this symbol script of J. So these are the sets of users and caches. Now user I is connected to a cache J if and only if the user I can retrieve a file from the cache J in the original network, right? So by retrieving, I mean this in the original network, maybe this cache J is within some distance, let's say within a hop length of at most k. So if a cache J is located at a distance of at most k hop length from the user I, then there is an edge. So I put an edge in the bipartite graph. Okay, so this is a reasonable assumption, and now the problem becomes how to solve this problem, the caching problem on this bipartite caching network. All right, so here I'm going to assume that the total number of the library size, the total number of possible files is n, and the caches have only capacity of c, where c is much smaller than n. And for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to assume that all caches have uniform size and all the file sizes are also equal to unity. And the assumption is that each user requests one file per slot, but the request sequence could be adversarial. So I'm not going to assume any stochastic assumption or any stochastic property of the request sequence. They could be completely arbitrary, and it could be chosen by some oblivious adversary in advance.
Abhishek, Samit Alok, sorry to interrupt. So just wanted to understand. So what does it mean that actually before that, there's another question. Maybe I should ask that. So someone is interested in knowing whether each user is identified by its user, and are the requested files unique? Okay, I'm not sure what.
Okay, so it's a dynamic problem. So the time is slotted, and at every slot, a user requests one file from a pool of n files. Okay, and which file the user will request, it is determined by some adversary. So I'm not going to make any assumption on that. Okay, so let's say I have the middle user, this middle user, and this is a vector of length capital N, and only one of these component is 1, the rest of the component is 0. The component 1, it corresponds to some file, and 1 in the corresponding position means that the user requests the file in the middle. That particular user, the middle user, requests the file in the middle. Some other user might also request some other file.
Okay, I think that answers that question. So just wanted to clarify one thing. So what does the request sequence being adversarial mean?
The request sequence being adversarial means, so I'm not going to make any stochastic assumption on the request sequence. So in general, what people generally do in this field is that they assume that, let's say there is a distribution, there is a popular distribution of the Zipf's distribution, Zipf's popularity law. And the file, the request sequence, I mean, the probability with probability P of F, the file is requested, the file F is requested, and PF satisfies some distributions. It's given by some distribution. Okay.
If I look at the request as a binary vector, so is there a constraint on how many ones I could have, or is there?
Yeah, it is only one file, only one request per slot per user. So I'm going to make this precise in the next slide. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So Abhishek, one more question. So capacity, what do you mean by capacity here? Do you mean by the number of files that can?
The number of files. There is no coding here. The number of files these caches can contain at a time.
Okay. And is there any assumption on the degree of the left degrees and the right degrees?
No, it's an arbitrary graph. So we'll be put some bounds on delta, but this could be some arbitrary graph.
Okay. So this is given a priori, and your goal is to design the cache.
The caching policy. So which files to cache at a time?
Okay, and is the cache being changed with time, or is it fixed?
At every time slot, yes. So we will also come to that. So we will also be considering policies which doesn't change the caches so often.
Okay, And if a file requests, so suppose that a user requests a file which is not present in any of the caches that it's connected to.
Yeah, so this will be clear in the next slide. So if the user's request is satisfied, which means there is a cache that the user can reach and the file is stored in that cache, then the user gets a reward of 1. Otherwise, if the file is not there in any of these connected caches, then the user gets a reward of 0. Okay. And my objective is to, in some sense, it is to maximize the reward.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but it will be clear. So I'll make this thing clear in the next slide. All right. So, okay, so some notations, as I said. So let's say YT of J, it denotes the cache configuration of the cache, Jth cache. So it's a n-dimensional vector consisting of 0 and 1. It can have at most C1s corresponding to those files which has been cached by some policy pi on the Jth cache. Okay. And xt of I, it is again n-dimensional vector, where recall n is a total number of possible files. So it is your library size. And xt of I is a requested file by the user I at time t. Okay, only one of this user requests only one file per slot, and so at most, so exactly one of this component is equal to 1. The rest of them are equal to 0. All right, and capital of xt is simply the cumulative file request up to time t. So we'll be designing algorithms based on capital X2. So that's why I'm going to define this, what capital XT means. And again, just to make everything clear. So let's again recapitulate what is going on. So this is user I's view. So let's say this one represents the file requested at time slot t. So this user is connected to some of these caches, and these caches some of these files, store some of these files. Right. So this is the right hand side delta plus of I is a set of all caches connected to the user I, and this user sees only those caches. Similarly, from the cache's point of view, it stores some files according to some caching policy, and though it can serve only those users which is connected to this cache G, right? And each of these users might be requesting different files at a given time slot, and the set of all users connected to the cache J is denoted by delta minus of J. Okay, so let's make sure that we are on the same page. So is the system model clear? Any question on that?
So Abhishek, I guess there are a couple of questions in the chat box. So Vipin asks, shouldn't it be XTI as total request by user I?
Okay. This is yes. So this is I'm actually stacking all these vectors. So yes, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is okay. Yeah, xt of I. You just put xt of I. There's a xt I missing, but capital of xt is when you actually vectorize the entire stuff. So it becomes n times I dimensional vector.
And Jitin asks, can we partition a file into 2 and these parts are stored in 2?
No. There is no coding, and the files cannot be partitioned. Those are indivisible items. So all files are indivisible, and they are a single unit. They cannot be divided further. Okay. So it's a kind of combinatorial problem. So I'm not considering any coded caching here. So we actually did consider coded caching in our Sigmatrix paper, but for this talk, I'm not going to. This is a purely combinatorial problem. So yeah, I'm not going to assume any coding or division of files. Yes.
So the way things happen is that you first assign the files to be loaded into each of these caches, and then you get to know what the request is.
Yes, absolutely.
Satisfied or not? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So in other sense, I guess you can think of it this way: that there's an adversary who'll see the list of all caches and decide an allocation for the users, and you want to make sure it's the game.
Yeah. So there is only one thing: the algorithm that you might have is not deterministic. So that will actually help you. You'll see. So that will help you. So because if it is a deterministic algorithm, then the adversary can always request files which is maybe not stored in any of these caches, right? But you will see that we will be designing a randomized algorithm, and that will help us in this regard. Yes.
Okay.
But you are right. The adversary sees the caching policy. It knows what the caching policy is going to be, and it can actually request those files, according to its wish. So I'm not going to assume any constraint on the request sequence.
Okay. So there's one more question in the chat box. That is, if a request is not satisfied, then is the file fetched into one of the caches?
No.
I guess it means that user cannot be satisfied.
Yeah, so that simply means, so this will be clear in the next slide. So technically what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to maximize the reward. Okay, so if the user's request is not satisfied, it's simply for that slot, it gets the reward of 0. But that doesn't mean, I mean, unlike, this is a very good question actually, and but that doesn't mean that that particular file will be fetched to the caches for the next slot. No, we are not going to do that. So we allow a more general caching policy, which need not, so there's an admission policy, which need not fetch any missed item.
So basically, the at any point in time, the user has to be instantaneously satisfied, or you just forget about that.
So the thing is that you can, from the practical point of view, you can think of that. Okay, so there are some caches. If the user gets satisfied from the caches, then it is good. Or it actually goes to the data center using a long route and it gets the file from this cache. But in that case, the user gets 0 reward.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So fine.
Yeah.
So maybe let's proceed to the next.
Okay.
Before I ask.
All right. So now it is important. So okay, what do you mean by? So what am I actually trying to optimize? I'm trying to optimize, as I said, the total hit, the number of cache hits over by all the users, and you can see that it can be written in this form. So XIT of F is simply the identity of the file requested by the user I at time t, right? And why is this mean one and sum of YTGF is doing? This is simply due to the fact that the user can get satisfied by any of these caches connected to him or to it. And if any of these caches, if any of this YJF is equal to 1, and then the user gets a reward of 1, otherwise it gets a reward of 0. And it doesn't matter if more than one cache is stored the same requested file. In that case, still the user gets a reward of 1. Okay, so this function captures, this is a nonlinear function in Y, and we'll see that this is going to be important, this nonlinearity for the design of our algorithm. We need to, we will have some difficulty, but we will actually, get around this difficulty in our algorithm design. Okay, so I hope that the reward function is clear. So
maybe one question at this point is that, so really there is no, so at every point in time you are assigning files to the caches, right?
Yeah.
So there's really no time dependence for the whole problem as of now. You can just forget about
no, because you see, I mean, this will be clear, because here what I would like to do, I would like to maximize the total hit rate in terms of regret, which means I would like to minimize the regret, right? So, and this is the sum of all the rewards obtained by the, okay, so if you know the definition of regret, by a fixed offline policy which knows all the requests in advance. So this is my benchmark. The first term is my benchmark, and the second term is the reward obtained by the particular caching policy. And this is a sum reward obtained by the over all the slots, over T slots. And this is a thing, this is called regret, and I would like to minimize that. So this is how the time dependence is coming into the picture. But if you're looking at a particular time, then yeah.
Okay.
Right. So let me explain like what is going on here. So the observation is that, as I said, according to this particular reward function, a user gets a hit if the requested file is hosted in any one of these connected caches, and the reward function is nonlinear in the caching configuration Y. Okay. And what we would like to do, we'd like to minimize this regret. This regret is defined as follows. The first term here corresponds to the maximum reward obtained by a fixed static caching configuration that knows all the requests in advance. So this is my benchmark. Okay, so Y star is a fixed caching configuration that knows all these XTs in advance, and depending on that, it caches some file. So it's a Y star, and this is the reward obtained by that policy. It's a static policy, so that's why it's called static regret, and minus the reward obtained by the algorithm that you design. And if you can get a bound on that, this simply means you have a lower bound on the hit rate of the policy that you design. So minimizing this regret, as small the regret is, the smaller the regret, the better your caching policy. So this will be our objective that we will try to minimize.
Okay, yes. Okay. So here the demands essentially are chosen adversarially in the sense that an adversary chooses it knowing only the policy, but not necessarily the instantiation.
Right. Yeah. So that's why this expectation is taken with respect to some random choice made by the adversary.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so it's not so yeah. So that was probably my question. So if it depended on the instantiation, then I guess the time would not really matter. But now I see.
Right. So this expectation, you can see that I have not introduced any randomness until now. So where is this expectation coming from? This expectation is coming from some random choice that the algorithm might make. This algorithm might make, and this is with respect to that expectation. So the expectation with respect to that randomness. Okay, so the adversarial sequence is not random, and the policy might be random. Okay. All right, and as I said, what is Wijster? Wijster is a based fixed caching configuration in the hindsight, and Wijster knows what the XTs are offline. Okay, so now let me go to a special case that we actually solved in the Sigmatrix paper. So this is the simplest one. This is a single cache. You have a single user and you have a single cache of capacity C. And we proved the following result. We showed that the lower bound, you can't do better than square root of Ct by 2 pi minus some 1 over root t. So the regret of any online caching policy is lower bounded by this quantity. And we designed a follow the perturb leader based caching policy that I'll actually going to describe next, that achieves this particular regret, which is, kind of optimal up to sans a logarithmic factor. Okay, and this problem was easy, as I say, because we'll see that this reward function here, since there's no mean over there because there's only one user and there's only one cache, the reward function is actually linear in the single cache problem. But simply this is not the case. This will not be the case for the multiple cache problem. So we need a more involved algorithm for that. And what was the algorithm for the single cache? It was very simple. This works like this. So you add a Gaussian noise to the cumulative file count, that's xt, and then cache the top C files only, right? So at any time slot, you have this capital of xt. Capital of xt is a cumulative files, the cumulative count of the files requested up to time t. And on top of it, you add Gaussian noise of an appropriate variance. So theta of t is that quantity, xt plus eta gamma, where gamma is IID normal 0,1. And then you just cache the top C files according to theta t. And we show that this policy has got that regret upper bound. So the FTPL policy, and regarding the number of files that you need to fetch at every time slot by the FTPL policy, we show that it is actually easy to see that the FTPL policy fetches at most one file per slot, and hence it is bandwidth efficient. And it is worth emphasizing, it's very important that the popular caching algorithms that we just mentioned earlier, for example, LRU, LFU, FIFO, and Marquardt, they are all probably suboptimal. They all have linear regret. Okay, so although, for example, we know that Marquardt is actually, in terms of competitive ratio, Marquardt is the optimal policy, but in terms of regret point of view, these are all suboptimal policy. Okay.
Abhishek, so a couple of questions, I guess.
Yeah.
So Vinay asks if so in the setting, the bipartite caching setting, any policy should always store all C files. Is that true? Should have exactly C files.
Can you please repeat the question again?
So the question is, in the bipartite caching setting, any good policy should have all caches store the maximum number of files C. So
yeah, that's true.
That's true, right? So the other question is, Dipen asks if eta is chosen to minimize the regret.
Eta is chosen, yeah. Eta is a parameter that we will fix later to minimize the regret. So we'll derive a regret bound in terms of eta, and then we'll optimize eta later. Eta goes like square root of t for a non-anytime policy, capital T. But for anytime policy, eta goes like square root of small t, and yeah. But for in that case, this is anytime policy, and eta goes like square root of t. Okay. Yes.
So okay. So another thing perhaps here is, like, so you're maximizing overall possible deterministic demands X, right?
Yes. So this is how regret is defined. You're talking about probably this the regret definition.
Yes.
So this is the worst case difference between the optimal offline optimal reward and the reward obtained by the online policy. and I'm maximizing. This is a worst case with respect to the request sequence XT.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do things change if XT is chosen like as in a stochastic manner?
Yeah, so we will come to that. Yes, so if XT is chosen according to stochastic manner, and if you know the distribution, then the problem becomes much more easy. It becomes a stochastic problem.
So in the sense that if you maximize over all possible distributions on XT.
If you maximize over all possible distributions, then it is simply, I mean, this is a sub case, right? Because one
exactly.
Yeah, so all possible distributions, you probably can maximize over a subclass of distributions. That might be an interesting, but if you consider all possible distributions, then these are all delta distributions, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a special case, but can you kind of generalize whatever you have to that case where you can maximize over distributions as well?
So here, no, I'm only considering, so first of all, if you can get a bound on this regret, static regret with respect to the worst case XT, it automatically gives you bound over any distribution. Right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So this is like, yeah. So, but if you have more information, probably you can do even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
All right. So then I'll go ahead. And now I'll actually, okay, so this is something that we did for the single cache and it was easy. So now let me tell you why the problem for the multiple cache is actually kind of hard. The hardness comes from the fact that you can't do this FTPL algorithm because this FTPL as such, because FTPL algorithm is defined for online linear optimization when your the reward function is bilinear in terms of this X and Y. But you can see that here in the queue of XT, YT, due to the fact that a user can get satisfied if any one of the connected caches stored that requested file. This is a highly nonlinear function. This is a piecewise nonlinear function, right? So you can't just apply FTPL. It doesn't fall into the framework. And so to get around this difficulty, we consider virtual action domain. Instead of Y, consider some virtual action domain Z. And what is Z? So each action Z of T is upper bounded by this quantity, mean of 1 and sum of Yj. Okay? And then we show that this reward function Q of XT of ZT in terms of Y instead of YT, if you just consider it as a online linear optimization problem in ZT, then it is bilinear. Then you can apply FTPL. And you can get an optimal virtual caching policy in terms of ZT. Now, once you get the optimal virtual caching policy, you can actually turn it back, okay? And try to ask this question, like, what is going to be my optimal caching policy, physical caching policy that gives you the same reward, okay? So let me show you the reduction here. So here you have XT and YT, the original problem. XT is your original file sequence and YT is the original caching policy. Here the reward function Q of XT, YT is nonlinear. So what we basically do, we actually consider a transformation, phi of YT that I'm going to describe next. The transformation is such that this problem becomes a linear optimization problem, right? So we can apply FTPL, follow the path leader here for this problem. This is kind of standard, but we need the regret bound has to be worked out separately, exploiting the structure of the problem. But let's say you have done it and you have got a good regret bound for this. And then you have got ZT of hat. This is a virtual policy. And once you have got the virtual policy, you need to convert it back to the original physical caching policy by solving an optimization problem P. And you get YT hat. And YT hat is a policy, the physical caching policy that has to be implemented. So this is the scheme. And the scheme is, okay. So is it clear what we are actually going to do? Or any question on that? Okay, so if there is no question, so let me tell you, okay, so although the scheme looks kind of solid, the issue is that the last problem, that I mean converting the ZT hat to YT hat, this is an NP hat problem. And this is shown an NP hat problem by a paper, it's a kind of very famous paper on femto caching by Shanmugam et al. In 2013. And they actually, they stumbled on this problem from a very different point of view. So they are considering some stochastic caching problem on edges, and they actually stumbled on the same problem, right? But anyway, this problem in their paper, they showed that this problem is NP hard and it is a reduction from the disjoint set covered. So what are we going to do now?
So Abhishek, I guess there's a question in the chat box. What is the function phi in the previous?
Yeah, this will be just clear. As I said, I'm going to describe this function phi in just a second. Yeah, just please bear with me for a second. Okay. All right. So, okay. So what is the function phi? So this is how we actually design this function phi. So first of all, you convert this problem, as I said, so you take a look at that. So ZT is upper bounded by, so ZT is some virtual caching action, which is upper bounded by mean of 1 and sum of Yj, where we recall that Yj is a valid caching policy, right? So in that case, I can write down the problem becomes, if you just use follow the butterfly, you need to solve this particular problem. So you maximize this linear function, max of 0 and theta of t, theta if of t multiplied by z of if, where z of if is a virtual caching action, such that z of if is upper bounded by sum of yjf, that is coming from this constant z is less than equal to mean of 1. And now y is the virtual caching action, so sum of yjf must be less than equal to c, because it must satisfy the caching capacity constraint. And we must also have these two relaxations. So in general, I mean, in the original problem, yj must be some 0 and 1 number, because either you cache the file or not. And similarly, z of if is also some 0 and 1 number in virtual caching. But here I relax these two constraints, and instead of being 0 and 1, I just relax it to be some real number in between 0 and 1 in this interval. Okay, so now I get a lit cache LP. So this is a linear programming problem, and we can actually solve it efficiently.
So basic question here.
Yeah.
So you're maximizing over all possible ZF IF, ZF YF of this particular thing. And can you just go back, like theta Fi, the definition of theta Fi?
So small theta, this is definition of theta is simply you add the noise to the cumulative.
Okay.
Yeah, the same theta.
Okay. Fine.
All right.
So okay. So one more question, perhaps. So you know the demands beforehand?
No. We don't know the demand beforehand. So that is why you sum this up only up to time t. So theta it, so capital of xt, you go back and you see where this capital of xt is actually defined. So it is the cumulative file request only up to time t.
Okay.
So sum of xit, there's a t inside, and I equals to, okay, so this is actually, the notation is absolutely messed up. So that should be xt. Okay, so small of xt, t, x tau equals to 1 to t minus 1. So it is a cumulative file request up to time t. So you don't know the current file request at time t.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So I guess another question, yeah. So you're fine. So anyway, you're evaluating only the FTPL policy. So I guess that's fine. Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
So theta is a random variable.
Theta is a random variable because you add Gaussian noise to that. Yes.
Okay.
You add Gaussian noise to the cumulative count vector up to time t. So theta t becomes a random variable. Yes.
Okay. So basically you have a random. So basically you're maximizing the expectation of.
No. Because the policy is adding the random noise. So capital theta t is known to the policy, but it is not known to the adversary. I mean, because of this gamma, you add this random perturbation gamma. So you can, right now this LP is a deterministic LP. There is nothing random about this LP. So theta of t is actually obtained. You have capital of xt, and then you some Gaussian noise, you add it, and then you have got this theta of t. And
so it is an instance of the random variable.
Yes, it's an instance of a random variable, and you know the value of this instance.
Fine. So this will give you the reward corresponding to one particular instantiation of the random variables.
So that's why we're taking, so our bounds are all in terms of expected value of with respect to this gamma. So yeah, if you run it differently, you might get some different thetas for the same xt. But the bounds are in terms of expectation with respect to gamma.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So as I said, okay. So this is an LP. Now you need to give prove some bounds. So how do you actually convert? This if you solve this LP, you'll probably get some fractional solution, right? because it need not be totally unimodular because it's an NP-hard problem. So here we use a technique called P-page rounding. It's a deterministic rounding technique. It was introduced by Aghiv and Spiridenko in 2004 for rounding Y-star to an integral solution. And it goes like this. So you define a surrogate loss function. So this is purely about solving that ILP, integer linear program. Okay, so you define a surrogate loss function 2Ly. So L of y is your original objective function, and phi of y is defined like this. Okay, why we define phi of y like this? Because of this approximation lemma. It turns out that phi of y is a good approximation. It is an approximation up to a factor of 1 minus 1 over e to this original reward function. And the most important thing about this is that keeping y minus j fixed. So if you keep the caching configuration of all caches excepting the jth cache fixed, phi of y is a linear function in each of this yj. Okay, this is just take a look at the definition, and you will see that this is true. And we'll see that this will help us a lot in designing a P-page rounding algorithm. Okay, the P-page is how does this P-page rounding actually works? It works like
so one more question over here. So what is I mean, I'm still having a little difficulty in understanding that delta quantity over there.
Delta, this delta plus I.
Yeah.
Okay, so I define it in the picture, the first picture, I think. Yeah. So delta plus of I is a set of all caches connected to the user I.
Okay.
And similarly, delta minus of j, it is a set of all users connected to the cache j.
Okay. So the bound over there, can you go back to where you have the capital delta? So what is capital delta equal to?
Where is it?
You give the bound.
Okay. So this is a maximum degree. So this is
degree,
I define it like this. So capital delta is a maximum or all delta plus of I.
Fine. So it's a max left degree of the graph.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, and you can show that this approximation lemma, this is very easy to prove. And the important thing is that for this particular surrogate loss function, this is not only an approximation, but keeping y minus j fixed, the caching configuration for the all caches except the jth cache fixed, it's a linear function in yj. And this was not true for this original reward function L of y, defining with respect to mean of 1 and sum of yj. Okay, and we'll see that this will help us a lot. So how does this P-page rounding works in general? So this works like this. So this is a general procedure, sorry. So you start with some y equal to y star, maybe the fractional LP solution that's obtained from solving the by LP, and repeatedly improved it to y dash such that, number one, y dash has strictly more integral coordinates than y. So initially, if they have 10 integral coordinates, y dash has at least 11 or 12 integral coordinates. It's always more. And phi of y dash, the surrogate function at y dash, that the new allocation is at least, it never decreases. So it is at least the value of the surrogate function in the original y. Okay. So if you can design a procedure that satisfies 1 and 2, then this approximation guarantee tells you that at the end, after some improvement, we will reach at a solution y int such that all of these components will be integral, right? And its approximation guarantee E will be 1 minus 1 over E of optimum. Okay, this follows by simple this chain of argument. So L of y int, so this is by the surrogate loss function, and phi of y int is at least phi of y star because of the property of the P-page rounding. And phi of y star is at least this quantity multiplied by L of y star. This is again from the property of the surrogate loss function. And L of y star, we know that it is at least opt because y star was a relaxation of the original problem. So L of y int is at least this factor of opt, and which means that it's 1 minus 1 over E optimality. Okay, so then the question is, how do you actually design a rounding procedure that satisfies number 1 and 2? So the state of the art P-page rounding procedure. So as I said, I mean, this is not only specific to our problem. This particular problem has also come up in some stochastic caching also. And state of the art rounding algorithm was proposed by Shanmugam 2013, and it has a high complexity of order m square n times delta. So why the complexity is so high? Because it was based on some generic P-page rounding procedure, again originally developed by Aghiv and Spiridenko. So what we do here, we actually introduce very simple cache-wise rounding, and it works like this. So let's say you have some users and some file, and I'm looking at let's say one particular cache only, and you look at any two files which have non-integral coordinates, right? And then you try to increase and decrease allocations in such that if you increase the allocation of one file by minus epsilon, you increase you decrease the allocation of one file by epsilon, you increase the epsilon for the corresponding allocation, and you do this until one of these allocation hits either 0 and 1, right? So you have two possible configuration: either you decrease minus epsilon or increase by plus epsilon. And at the end, you choose the best among these two configurations. According to the best is computed according to this surrogate loss function. Okay, and you can show that the number of non-integral coordinates always decreases here, because you only stop either one of these fractional file allocation becomes either 0 and 1. So number of integral coordinates increase, and also because of the fact a linear function over an interval always achieves maxima in one of the endpoints, so it always holds that phi of y dash is at least equal to phi of y. Okay, using this very simple observation, we can see that this P-page rounding works, and this is our theorem. It's the achievability theorem. The expected regret for the lead cache policy, assuming that you can actually solve it for optimality, it is bounded by this quantity where k is some polylogarithmic factor of n over c. You can think of this as a constant, and now n is the number of users, and this d is the right degree of this network. Okay, not the left degree but the right degree, square root of mct, right? So I think I have defined, and m is a number of caches, and c is the capacity, and capital T is the time. And we also show a lower bound, okay, and it goes like this. So RT of pi, you can show that for any caching policy pi, the regret is lower bounded by this quantity. I'm not going to spell it out, but the takeaway point from these two theorems is that if you combine theorem 1 and theorem 2, after some calculation, you can show that this lead cache policy, we call our caching policy lead cache, and it is regret optimal up to a factor of n to the power 3/8, irrespective of everything else. For example, D and C and everything. So where n is simply the number of users. Okay, so this is our main result, and I'm going to give a very brief sketch of this achievability and the converse.
So quite a couple of questions here. So the bound is independent of m. Which of caches?
The m is the number of caches. M is the number of caches, and n is the number of users.
Yeah. So the gap. Okay. So the gap is independent.
Yes. This gap is independent. You can show that. Yes.
Okay.
The gap is only a function of n to the power 3/8 at most.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm trying to kind of understand the policy over here. So you solve the linear optimization problem.
Yeah.
You get a set of solutions.
Yeah.
And then you basically have to do a rounding.
Yeah.
And the rounding works by taking each pair of caches and trying to.
No, rounding works like this. So you take one cache, let's say,
Sure.
and let's say this cache has got two fractional coordinates, and then you round this two fractional coordinates into at most one fractional coordinates using P-page rounding, and then again check if there is any other fractional coordinates. Okay. In that cache. If it is there is no other fractional coordinates, then you are done. So that is why we call cache by cache P-page rounding.
So you always take pairs of elements in the cache. You're taking pairs of variables corresponding to each cache, and then trying to round each one of them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And it is always a case, since the C is equal to some integral, if there is some fractional coordinates, there will be at least two fractional coordinates. There could not be any one fractional coordinate.
Sure.
So that's why you always find this. Yeah.
And anyway, you need to satisfy that it's the total, the sum is less than or equal to C.
Yeah, exactly. So there is no issue with the capacity conflict.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how it works, and yeah. All right. Okay, so I'm going to give a very brief proof. I mean, the proof ideas. So the proof idea, it's this FTPL policy with this Gaussian perturbation. It's a kind of recent work. So we follow a recent work by Cohen et al. In 2015, and we're following them. So that although the Cohen et al. They actually give a policy which is not anytime policy, which needs to know the time horizon capital T. We actually give a more generalized version of this policy where we do not need to know the time horizon capital T. So it works for any time. So that's why I called it for any time policy. And for this, we define this potential function phi of eta t of x to be expected value of this. This is also called the Gaussian smoothing of this set. Expected value of max of z in script of z, where recall script of z is a virtual caching configuration, and that's the inner product of z and x plus eta t of gamma. Okay, so this is a potential function, and you can show the following. You can
Abhishek,
show
this is Amit Taluk. Sorry to interrupt again. I'm not sure if I missed this, but is there a specific reason you pick up the Gaussian, or is it going to come up?
Is there a specific reason I pick up the Gaussian?
Can I change the distribution, for example? Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we, actually we actually tried with some because the Gaussian gives you the best bound for single cache. So that was our intuition.
Oh, so in the single cache case, you can show that the Gaussian is the best.
The Gaussian, yes, the Gaussian is optimal up to the logarithmic factor.
Okay.
So it is not even n to the power 3 by 8. It's some constant. I mean, if you bar this logarithmic factor, and logarithm is only it is also very small. It is log of n over c. So it is just a fraction. And typically n over c is some constant, because if you want to guarantee some hit ratio, your c over n, c cannot be too small. So c over n, let's say 10%, and then it's some constant approximation. And I don't think that let's say if you do exponential or uniform noise, it gives you this kind of bound. So it's a sort of specific to the Gaussian, I think. But again, there is a possibility some other noise distribution might also give you this result.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. And you can show that, okay, so the first of all, the gradient is simply the hit rate, again, with respect to the virtual caching configuration. And using Stein's lemma, you can show that the Hessian looks like this. So 1 over eta expected of z p hat and y gamma q. Okay, and then you use Taylor series expansion and you get this regret bound. And in the regret bound, you have got 3 terms. The first term corresponds to Gaussian complexity. The second term corresponds to the anytime thing that you want to do, because if all of these etas are equal, then this term simply goes away. But since we actually want anytime policy, we need to bound this. And the last term is you have to bound the quadratic, okay, in terms of the Hessian. And the final regret bound actually is obtained by carefully bounding each of these set of 3 terms and by exploiting the structure of this problem. So the generic bounds, so let me emphasize, the generic bounds do not work. So these are suboptimal. So we actually really need to exploit the structure of the problem to get to that n to the power 3 over 8 result.
Abhishek, sorry, Amit Taluk here again. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. So is there any art in choosing the potential function specifically? I mean, the one that you've chosen here?
There is, whether there is any art. I mean, actually this question came up in my class maybe 1 week ago. And I just gave them the answer that we do have some ideas. For example, a potential function could be, for example, this is the reward that is actually obtained after time step x. For example, if you look at the analysis of hedge in terms of potential function, that's simply softmax. Okay, some form of softmax. So here, because there you really want to get to the maximum of these experts. So here I would like to maximize the total heat in terms of, you know, the total heat, right? So yeah, but I don't think like there is a very straightforward way of always computing the potential function, at least in this case. But these things, okay, so these are tried and tested method, and this kind of things work. And this potential function has got a name. It's called the Gaussian. It's called the smoothing, Gaussian smoothing of this set. So yeah. But yeah, I'm sorry, but I can't give you any very specific.
No worries. Sure. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. And definitely, I'm not going to show the bounds because each of these bounds take maybe 1.5 pages. So yeah, just believe me that, or just take a look at this paper and you can actually bound each of this quantity and get the bound. And now I'm going to, very interesting question about the, so if your caching policy requires, so this question actually was asked by you maybe 20 minutes ago. So what happens if you miss a file and whether you are actually going to load it in a cache? So of course, you can see that FTP policy doesn't do that. Then you can ask me the question, so what if this caching policy simply keeps on reloading the cache? I mean, reconfiguring these caches at every slot. And this is going to be very, very difficult to implement because that will involve lots of file downloads from, let's say, central server. And so there are two ways of answering this question. The first way is to not to make any assumption, is the thing that we have been doing so far on the file request sequence, and that I'm not going to do for at least for this part. And the second assumption that I'm actually going to do, I'm going to assume some minimal assumption on this file request sequence. So the assumption looks like this. So I'm going to assume that there is this file request sequence, although they are adversarial, but they do satisfy. So there exists some numbers pi of f such that this limit exists. That is xi of t. So some strong law of large number type assumption. And actually we do assume something little bit stronger than that. We assume that this summation, sum of t equal to 1 to infinity, this probability that xi of t over t minus pi of f is at least epsilon is bounded, it's summable function, it is summable sequence. And you can see that this condition necessarily implies, by a simple application of first Budal-Cantillon lemma, this definitely implies that a strong law, that is xi of t, it does converge to some number. So this limits exist, but it's a little bit stronger than that. Okay. And let's see what you actually get with this assumption. And this, I think, is very surprising. We show that the number of downloads, that's the number of caching configuration changes that you have, is finite with probability 1. This simply means, under the hour regularity assumption, the file fetches to these caches stop after a finite time, almost surely. Okay. And this result just requires the strong law of large number time assumption, nothing else.
So by file fetches, you mean the number of cache refreshes, right?
Number of cache refreshes, exactly.
Okay, so I guess it's.
Sorry?
Is it because, eventually after a certain point in time, the demands are going to be roughly the same?
Yeah, some stationarity. Yeah, it will be roughly converging to pi of f. According to my assumption that I've assumed. And then this Gaussian, and again, there was some other question like whether I can actually use some other distribution other than the Gaussian. And I think if I use exponential, this result will not hold. We need something stronger, some tail bound that is even stronger than exponential. And for this particular result to hold, this is a very strong result. So number of file fetches to the cache stop after a finite time with probability 1 under this particular assumption. And I think this is very surprising. Okay, and again, this proof also is like more than 2 pages, so I'm not going to do justice by giving all the proof here, but you can definitely take a look. But what the proof proceeds like this: you define some error events, and this error event is with respect to, since you know that there exists some optimal caching configuration in the stochastic sense, corresponds to this vector p. Okay, this assumption, this p comes from your assumption. Let's say z tilde is a corresponding file optimal caching configuration corresponding to that p, right? And now you define an error event such that at a given time slot t, your FTPL policy gives a virtual caching configuration which is which is not zi of tilde. And since it is actually maximizing this inner product, so that definitely means that this event holds. That is, the inner product of theta of t and zi of t is definitely larger than theta of t or zi of tilde, because that's the reason you chose something other than zi of tilde, right? And we show that this probability is bounded by 2 terms. One is exponential minus ct, and this requires the Gaussianity property. So we exploit the Gaussianity of this noise here, and plus another term, which is simply summation of all these probabilities and some epsilon defined like delta over 2nn. Okay, and then you just sum it up and just use the assumption and show that with and apply it and appeal to the first Budal-Cantillon lemma and show that this probability goes to 0. That's probability that it is infinitely often is 0, almost surely. Okay, and for details, please take a look. But I think this result is quite surprising. And this is the last part. Probably I'll take maybe 5 minutes. The minimax lower bound, because I think this is interesting from the point of view of the underlying mathematics. So how do you actually derive the lower bound? So previously I showed you how to get the upper bounds by defining some potential function, but getting the minimax lower bounds means it should not depend on what kind of policy you are using, right? So it's a universal lower bound. And again, there are difficulty even for the single cache. And again, this difficulty stems from the non-linearity of the reward function, right? And it makes so you need to make this offline optimal reward opt star. You have to evaluate the expectation. And so how this proves generally what you assume according to your wish some stochastic file request pattern. Okay, so this is called the probabilistic method, and I'm sure all of you are actually familiar with this once you relate this to the proof of channel capacity theorem of Shannon. Okay, so there he showed that there exist good codes, and he simply showed this using some probabilistic methods. So he considered the ensemble of codes with some probabilities, and he showed that on the average the probability of error is for all these codes is small, which means there do exist one. So here we are also going to use exactly the same method. So I'm going to assume some file request probability, but here the files are dependent file request. I mean, it turns out that this is the optimal choice. Okay, and all users request the same file chosen uniformly at random, right? But now the difficulty is how do you actually compute the expectation of the reward function? And it turns out that it is challenging, but this opt star can be computed, lower bounded, by a class of caching configuration satisfying a certain local exclusivity property. And I'm going to define what this means. This means it is a set of all caching configuration right now I consider such that all caches connected to each user hosts distinct files. Okay, so I'm going to lower bound opt star by comparing it to this caching configuration that satisfies a local exclusivity property. Okay, and I'll pick one such locally exclusive caching configuration that has got the highest expectation, and I'll lower bound opt star with that. Okay, and why this local exclusivity is nice? It is nice because under the local exclusivity constraint, the reward function becomes linear. You can check that. So the nonlinearity was basically stemming from the fact that the user can get the same file from more than one user. But the local exclusivity simply makes this thing irrelevant because I'm only considering the caching configuration where all caches connected to each user by definition host distinct files. So the nonlinearity actually goes away, and that helps. Okay, and to obtain the tightest lower bound for opt star, we need to design the best caching configuration of wipeout with this local exclusivity constraint. And turns out this is a graph coloring problem. Okay, and so you need to color. That means, let's say you assign each of these caches to some color, and you assign those files to the caches corresponding both the colors of these caches as well as the number of file requests that have been made for the particular files. Okay, and it needs a little bit more thought, and we actually use Brooks theorem to find a near optimal coloring of this caches so that local exclusivity holds, and then the files are assigned to each color according to the frequency of the request and the number of caches in the same color. Okay, so this is the combinatorial part, and now the stochastic part. And it turns out that still now we need to lower bound the expected reward accrued by the offline optimal policy, and which is closely related to this very simple balls into beans problem. It is a simple problem, but turns out that this problem was still unsolved. This problem is as follows. So let's say you have 2 C beans and you have T number of balls. You are throwing these balls into these beans uniformly at random. And what do you want? You want a lower bound on the expected load of the balls, non-asymptotic, in a non-asymptotic fashion, expected load of the balls in the most occupied C beans. Okay, and it turns out that you need to solve this problem to get the corresponding expectation for the optimal policy. Okay, and there is a very simple way of doing that. You simply club 2 beans together and pick the one having the maximum load among these 2 beans. And so definitely opt is lower bounded by this sum of these maxes of each of these super beans. And so I've shown you the results here. again, it needs a couple of pages of work, and it turns out that this problem, although it seems to be very classical, getting an upper bound is easy. Okay, you can just use Mossard's lemma, but getting a lower bound, non-asymptotic lower bound is hard, and we do this. We did this using this. It is also there in our Sigmatrix paper, and so that's it. So that actually concludes the theory that I wanted to convey. So these are some highlights of the theory that actually went into this paper in designing these algorithms. So let me show just one simulation results before I conclude my talk. So just to see how dramatic the improvement in terms of, let's say, hit rate, I just forget about all the regrets and stuff. In practice, I only care about the hit rates, and I'm just going to show these hit rates. And this is not simulation. So this is a real trace data released by CMU, and we just run our algorithm over 5x3 bipartite network with 1%, where each of these caches have 1% of 10% of this library file size. Okay, and you can see that FTPL is doing far better than the most used caching policies, let's say LRU and LFU. I also have another plot on this downloads. This downloads actually decreased by, unfortunately, my other student is in quarantine right now, so he could not supply me this download plot. But this is how this download works. So initially, the FTPL download is high, and then, as the theory predicts, it actually goes very fast to 0, and it stays over there. Okay. So in conclusion, so we have proposed a lead cache policy for network caching. We have proposed a fast implementation, approximate implementation using a linear time cache by cache p-page rounding. And we have derived tight lower bounds for regret by combining both combinatorial and probabilistic ideas. And we have proved that lead cache is bandwidth efficient under SLLM, the strong law type of assumption. So the open problems. So again, we are comparing the performance of our policy with respect to static regret. That's a static policy which never changes its caching configuration. How about dynamic regret? How can we design a policy where the comparator, it can change times in a sublinear number of times? Okay. It could be possible, and we are currently looking into that. It looks like this is the answer lies here. So can somebody design an FTPL version of some other algorithm called fixed shared algorithm? And we are currently looking into that. And a positive answer towards this will guarantee that there existed a good dynamic regret. And also about the number of fetches. So can we actually do without, can we actually limit the number of fetches without the stochasticity assumption? And yes, it is very much doable, and we will prove it in our next paper. So we already have this proof. So it's like square root t, it goes like square root of t. And so this is possible. And with this, I'd like to conclude this talk. And please tell me if you have any question on that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Abhishek. It was a very nice talk. I mean, especially getting out the ideas was particularly helpful. So I'll wait for the audience first. So anybody, if you have any question, please feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, sir. So I have one question. So regarding obtaining the lower bound, right? So we basically restrict the kind of caches that we can have by defining this exclusive caches.
Yes, yes.
But then it would not be a lower bound, right? Because what we want is we want to minimax keeping any possible caching policy that we want, but we are now focusing on a particular kind of cache.
Right. So let's take a look at this, and it will be clear. So let's take a look at the definition of the regret. Let's see where I actually define. Yeah. So let's take a look at the definition of this regret.
Abhishek, you're actually not sharing your screen.
I see. Really? Okay. Okay. Let me do present now.
Just give it a second.
1 minute, huh?
Sure.
1 minute. Okay. Sure. Is it coming up now?
Yeah, it's coming.
Yes.
Okay.
Just give it a second. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So can you see the definition of this regret?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. In the first term, you have the policy. I mean, this is a reward obtained by the optimal policy, right?
Yes.
So, and the second term is the reward obtained by the caching policy, any caching policy.
Yes.
So the distribution, according to the distribution that we actually assumed, you can actually evaluate the second term without any approximation. What do we need? If you need a lower bound, you need to lower bound the reward obtained by the optimal policy. So that is, we need a lower bound the first term. And so that is why we were considering some suboptimal caching configuration. We can lower bound this quantity with respect to that.
Okay.
Does it answer your question?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the second term is easy. The second term, according to the distribution that you actually assumed, so we actually designed the distribution in such a way that the second term was easy, but the first term required some approximation. I mean, some lower bounding, but that is okay. I mean, we get a kind of tight lower bound. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah. Any other questions, anyone?
So also in the achievability result, I had a doubt. So I
Okay.
couldn't get clearly how does, so basically we are replacing the minimum of 1 comma y term by a different action z, and then we are
You mean the design? Okay, yeah.
yeah. So we are replacing this term by z, and then we are choosing z according to the FTPL policy, right? By a so basically the LP
Yes.
problem.
It is not replacing; it's in the upper bound, so you still have some freedom. But anyway, yeah, that's what you're doing.
Yes. So then when we get the FTPL regret bound, then it's not with respect to the original y, right? It's with respect to z, because we are applying the FTPL bound on z, FTPL policy on z.
Yeah, but this is the z. Okay, so for this particular y, there is a one particular z, right? There is a set of z that corresponds to some y, and we are to just solve this inverse problem.
But that does not make, like, still the bound is just for us, like when the optimal that we, so in so for obtaining the achievability bound, we have the y star as well in the regret definition, right? And FTPL bound should depend on y star as well.
No,
So-
one minute. So so in this, so we have a policy that is only operating on YT, right? At the end to end. So in between there are some Z's. So it doesn't matter how we actually get this caching policy.
Yeah, but I am saying that the bound that you
Yeah,
show
the
for
bound, right.
FTPL,
So
that will be dependent on Z star, not on Y star, because FTPL operates in the space of Z, not in space of Y.
yeah, but that's still fine because there's a kind of one-to-one correspondence. So the thing is that, so think about it. So let's say ZT is mean of 1 to sum of over all of YT.
Z is not a one-to-one correspondence, sir. Z is
So let's say, okay, so there's a reason that we actually put it the Z equals to, let's say this lower bound is actually equals, right?
Okay.
So for each particular Y, you have one Z,
okay.
right? Now, your FTPL policy gives you one such Z. Now, if I can find some Y that gives you that Z, then I'm done. So I'm basically get the same regret bound.
Okay, got it. Cool. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Okay, so why it is not equal, not greater than equal? This is just due to some computational reason. So yeah, so if you take a look at this paper, then you'll see. But this is the idea.
Got it. Okay, fine.
So at the end, everything is in terms of y. So z is just an intermediate variable that just pops up in the analysis.
Okay, got it. So just one last question. So that
Yeah.
1 minus 1 by e factor should also be there in the final bound, right? Because
Yes,
that is
yes.
the-
I mean,
yeah.
okay, yeah. I actually didn't discuss that. So assuming that, okay, so this is okay. The answer is not that clear here because what we actually saw. Okay, so here is some computational. So you are saying, okay, so you just solved it using some approximation method, right? What we actually saw, we found something very interesting. If you run this on with we are remember we are actually adding random perturbation, right? And in most of the cases, if you just run the LP, it turns out integral solution.
Okay.
Okay, in most of these cases. So we wondered why, and there is some very recent results on the computational complexity with respect to the smoothed complexity. This is called smoothed complexity. Okay, so it turns out in certain problems, if you add random instead of solving for the hardest case, that's what the general NP theory does. Okay, if you look at some random ensemble of problems, the complexity changes very drastically. We could not prove that this is the case, but in practice, it turns out that most of the cases you don't even need to run this PPG rounding algorithm.
Oh, okay.
Because you are not solving a worst case version. You are adding Gaussian noise to that. And that might solve this problem, but yes, the story is not clear, so we might need to think about that. So probably this is actually going to give you the optimal. You don't need this 1 minus 1 over E guarantee in your regret bound.
Okay, fine, got it.
Yeah, but we don't have any proof for that. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Yep. Any other question? Okay, Shashank, do you have any other question?
No questions from me.
Okay. Yeah, we generally had a fair bit of questions along the way, so thanks. So maybe we should thank Abhishek. Abhishek, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
a fantastic talk. And thanks for being patient with all our questions. We really, I think it was helpful. It was quite a nice bit of work, and it was nice to understand so many details. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks everyone for joining us. Look out for the next talk, and we hope to see many of you there again. Thanks. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Yeah. Bye.